way you're handling the gun. Gambling, you're done. Shells burn like candles in the sun. I'm not a fan of gun violence, nor having a strap, but get popped once, and I swear that you'll be scrambling for one. But our plans was to get funds and skate off the set, so I mixed the kush with the dro to make all my weight stretch. I'm from with a dudes rob and argue all day about who's the best MC, Saha Stacks and T.I. while dodging the GBI. My bad, I love GZI, but I'm still the best to ever do it, and I ain't even put a CD out. So the next time you say that I ain't got no lyricist, I just think you ain't got a taste for this exquisite shit. My verses are like Leviticus to the underprivileged. I make music for the world, you make music for a stripper bitch. Nick Black leather, beret cap era, guns at your capital, take it to that measure. It's Huey, nigga. It's Huey, nigga. Never been a victim, a rebel against the system. Lames wanna diss them and women just wanna kiss them. It's Huey, nigga. It's Huey, nigga. This that God flow, what they nailed Jesus to the cross for. And he came back 3 days after he died flow. This Pablo, talking to kids in Chicago, mob flow. This that midget New Jersey drive flow. Side note, I wrote this rap with my eyes closed, bravo. Cause it came out clean as the Moss flow, Costco. Hoes selling they twat for a Carno. Benny Hunters and Roscoe, Picasso. Nas mixed with a pop flow. Rappers can't stand me. This that Grammy Nas flow. Let me stop though, cause I'm going digital with the syllables. Saw the press and the royalty like residual. These hoes score me, they supposed to be hospitable. When they in the house with a nigga that's not typical, this not fictional. I run this bitch like elliptical. Can another rapper come out of Atlanta if he not lyrical? Nigga, black leather, beret cap era, guns at your capital, take it to that measure. It's Huey, nigga. It's Huey, nigga. Never been a victim, a rebel against the system. Lames wanna diss them and women just wanna kiss them. It's Huey, nigga. It's Huey, nigga.
This that shot right, where out of towners die at. I advise you book your flight now and fly back. Gangland, bang then, what you claim, fam? Box Chevys, foreigns, buck 50 flow. Young nigga got bitches at the 50 though. 50 pack done, good, drop off 50 more. My city rough, but I made it in it. Trap house look like it's what K's invented. Trust nobody, even friends, look, I hate up in it. Rhyme dirty with your bitch smoking, wait a minute. LA garage with Illinois and Decatur in it. Nigga snitching, I'm like, way to win it. Nigga looking like a state defendant. Four dollar like a two though. My $2 like a full though. I'm cutting up, call me Zorro. Hit him in his mask, get him a body bag. Give me a track, and I'ma body that.
What's going on, everybody? Peace to the chat. Peace to everybody that'll catch the replay. With Sean P in the place to be. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Hopefully you can hear me. I want to make sure that I get this clear. What we're about to do today is expound on something that I got into the other day with Coach Prime. Was he swagging? Is black culture different from HBCU culture? The reason being is because I was watching something earlier today that comes on, and this HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, who has a degree in sports kinesiology, et cetera, et cetera. And he has this panel where it does inside the HBU Sports Lab. And he received an email from someone that wanted to interview him and talk about HBCUs and get their take on, the whole Coach Prime scenario or whatever. And just The video will be in the description along with any source that you see on the screen. And how I want to say this. There were some things that were said in that thing that actually geared me up a little bit. Being that I have an HBCU experience, I've been to a HBCU. You know what I'm saying? And I know what the HBCU life is all about. So I want to kind of go through just a few things. Let me rearrange my glasses real quick. I go through a few things, and then I want to get into the whole HBCU thing, and then I want to deal with the video. So if you have family members, friends that are black, or you have, of course, black, but people who went to PWIs or people who went to PWIs is predominantly white institutions or historically white colleges and universities, HWCUs. If you have anybody, right, in your family that did that, like the show, share the show, make sure you share the show with them, make sure you like it. I don't know how many people gonna come in today. I know it's the afternoon. There's a lot of things going on. People are probably working. Some people are probably resting. Maybe somebody else is live. I don't know. If somebody else is live and I cut into that bill, then I guess those of you who are really interested in the subject matter and topic will tune in. But I'm pretty sure the longer that I go, the more the audience will actually grow. I am streaming from 2 different channels. So everybody that's on the other channel that I'm streaming from on my any red, and peace to you. I appreciate y'all tapping in. But I am on Kofi Pi side as well. So make sure that you like the show and share the show, and people that are interested tap in. This is this is a very serious topic that needs to be had. And of course, I don't argue from ignorance. I only argue with information. So again, if you're just joining us, share the show. You got family members that went to a HBCU, send them the link. Send them the link. Make sure they're in the building for this. It's serious out here. Make sure that they are in the building for this. All right. I'm just sharing the show. You know, I kind of let people that was already here from the gate know where we are so that we can move a little bit forward and we can go on with our bill. So I appreciate everybody that's tapped in. Mo, I see you on the other side. I see you on the other side, Mo. Make sure you hit that like button. All right, so look, we got Brother Lavelle in the building. You see him talking about a swag life. That's another argument for another day. It's another argument for another day. But we're going to get into it. All right, so as always, when you're talking about culture, or if you're talking about a subject matter, whatever it is that you're talking about, you want to make sure that you define it, and you define it in a sense to where everybody can learn from it. So I want to talk about culture because that's the word that's being used, Black culture versus HBCU culture. I'm not making this up. There's an element of people out there that seems to think that there's some differences here. And they never defined what the HBCU culture is. And I keep telling people I think that's the wrong word. My argument is traditions, because there are traditions inside of the Black culture for people who went to HBCUs that separated from other people's experiences. That ain't cold, you know what I'm saying? So Let's define what culture is to see if I'm right or wrong in my position or argument. So we're not going to get into all the learning objectives from this particular article, but we are going to talk about culture from a sociological perspective. And this is what this article does. And again, like I said before, all my sources are in the description. So I'm not going to miss a beat on anything that I'm actually talking about today. Come on, man, like the show, share the show, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that we're live. If you went to an HBCU, if you went to a PWI, if you graduated or dropped out, we need to have a conversation. Just please do me a favor and like the streams. Like the streams. So, what is culture? Culture was defined early as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are a part of any society. I want to say that again so that we're clear. Culture was defined earlier as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are part of any society. As this definition suggests, there are two basic components of culture: ideas and symbols on the one hand, and artifacts, material objects on the other. The first type, called non-material culture, also known as symbolic culture, includes the values, beliefs, symbols, and language that define a society. The second type, called material culture, includes all the society's physical objects, such as its tools and technology, clothing, eating, utensils, and means of transportation. These elements of culture are discussed next. So, I'm not going to go too far on the symbols, but I am going to give you a distinct description of symbols. Every culture is filled with symbols or things that stand for something else and that often evoke various reactions and emotions. Some symbols are actually types of nonverbal communication, while other symbols are in fact material objects. Here's an example of that, like, this little sign right here. Gesture, right? Hand gestures. That's what they're talking about, symbols. Language. Perhaps our most important set of symbols is language. In English, the word chair means something we sit on. In Spanish, the word silla means the same thing. As long as we agree how to interpret these words, a shared language and thus society are possible. By the same token, differences in language can make it quite difficult to communicate. For example, imagine you are in a foreign country where you do not know the language and the country's citizens do not know yours. Worse yet, you forget to bring your dictionary that translates their language into yours and vice versa. And your iPhone battery has died. You become lost. How will you get help? What will you do? Is there any way to communicate your plight? So you have norms next. Cultures differ widely in their norms or standards and expectations for behaving. We already saw that the nature of drunken behavior depends on society's expectations of how people should behave when drunk. Norms of drunken behavior is influence how we behave when we drink too much. Norms are the formal and informal rules regarding what kinds of behavior are acceptable and appropriate within a culture. Norms are specific to a culture, time period, and situation. Rituals. Different cultures also have different rituals or established procedures and ceremonies that often mark transitions in life course. As such, rituals both reflect and transmit a culture's norm and other elements from one generation to the next. Graduation ceremonies in colleges and universities are familiar examples of time honored rituals. In many societies, rituals help signify one's gender identity. For example, girls around the world undergo various types of initiation ceremonies to mark their transition to adulthood. Among the Bimba of Zambia, girls undergo a month-long initiation ceremony called the Chinsungu, in which girls learn song, dance, and secret terms that only women know. In some cultures, special ceremonies also mark a girl's first menstrual period. Such ceremonies are largely absent in the US, where a girl's first period is a private matter. But in other cultures, the first period is a cause for celebrating or celebration involving gifts, music, and food. Changing norms and beliefs. Our examples show that different cultures have different norms, even if they share other types of practices and beliefs. It is also true that norms change over time within a given culture. Two obvious examples here are hairstyles and clothing styles. When the Beatles first became popular in the 60s, their hair barely covered their eyes. But parents and teenagers back then were aghast at how they looked. If anything, clothing styles change even more often than hairstyles. Hemlines go up and hemlines go down. Labels become wider, labels become narrow. This color is in, this color is out. Hold on to your out of style clothes long enough, and eventually they may well end up back in style. Values. Values are another important element of culture and involve judgments of what is good or bad, desirable or undesirable. A culture's value shapes its norms. In Japan, for example, a central value is a group of harmony. The Japanese place great emphasis on harmonious social relationships and dislike interpersonal conflict. Individuals are fairly unassertive by American standards, lest they be perceived as trying to force their will on others. When interpersonal personal disputes do arise, Japanese do their best to minimize conflict by trying to resolve the disputes amicably. Lawsuits are thus uncommon. In one case involving disease and death from a mercury polluted river, some Japanese who dared to sue the company responsible for the mercury poisoning were considered bad citizens. Not in the US. I'm not going to get too much into work ethic or the other thing, but I'm going to talk about artifacts real quick and then we're going to move on. So, the last element of culture is the artifacts or material objects that constitute a society's material culture. In the most simple societies, artifacts are largely limited to a few tools, the huts people live in, and the clothing they wear. One of the most important inventions is the evolution of society was the wheel. So here we have a few examples of what makes up a culture. And to run it back to everybody who might just be joining in, popping out and popping back in, I'm gonna give you these examples again of what makes culture. Culture is defined earlier as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are part of any society. So I want to try to make clear here is how do we black people determine or separate black culture from HBCU culture? Does HBCU culture have its own symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts as a part of that society? Does black culture have different symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts for that society, whether it be non material or material? This is a serious question because y'all are going to see why. Those of you who are in here at this particular juncture, As the bill continues, you're going to understand why. So I want to go to my next source real quick, just to give you a little history lesson on HBCUs. All right. For those of you who are not familiar with, historically, black colleges and universities have been at the center of American story for over 180 years, socially and economically. I want you to think about that. How long have African Americans, first Africans, and then the African Americans who descend from the Africans, been in America? How long have we been in the Americas? How long have we been in North America? How long has HBCUs existed? Rather socially or economically? Let's deal with it. We ain't got to get into the notable black people that went to HBCUs, but we do know the vice president, Miss Harris, she went to an HBCU. We all know about Oprah Winfrey. We already know about Martin Luther King Jr. Thurgood Marshall, and then you got Michael Strahan, but there's a lot of notable ones behind that. So, beginning, well, everybody know after the Civil War between 1861 and 65, HBCUs emerged to provide Black Americans the most basic of human rights. So it was after the Civil War that HBCUs emerged, where we can access a full education. Prior to the Civil War, the education of Black Americans was prohibited in most Southern states and often discouraged in Northern states, resulting in only a few Black schools being in existence. What were those schools? Let's take a look and see. Let's see. You got the Cheney University, the University District of Columbia, Lincoln University, and Wilberforce University, right? With Cheney being the first. Most of our nation's HBCUs were started by philanthropists and free Blacks. I'm going to say that again. Most of our HBCUs were started by white people. Let me just say it like that, because y'all want to play games. We're just going to say it like that. The majority were started by white people and free Blacks. Southern states, at the behest of the federal government and religious organizations such as the AMA, American Missionary Association, and then the African Methodist AME Church. Y'all got it. Now, by and large, the first HBCUs were established to educate children of formerly enslaved people and train them to teach other Black Americans. That's why they was established. Only schools that was available to most Black Americans, they often provided primary, secondary, and post-secondary education. So if there was a school, you can go through all the school you want to right there. You're going to get your elementary, middle school, high school education in that one school. All right. So from the late 1800s to the late 1900s, HBCUs thrived, provided refuge for laws and public policies prohibited Black Americans from attending most colleges and universities. HBCUs provided undergraduate training for 75% of all Black Americans holding a doctorate degree, 75% of all Black officers in the armed forces, and 80% of all in the federal judges. Before higher education was desegregated in the 50s and 60s, almost all Black students enrolled at HBCUs. I'm gonna say that again. Before desegregation, almost all Black people went to HBCUs. They didn't have a choice to go to a historically white college or university. Right? We all agree with that? Which goes back to my question about Black culture versus HBCU culture. See what I'm saying? All right. So that's just a little bit of the timeline. Like I said, for more detailed information regarding that, just check the description link in the video, and I promise you that you're gonna have all of that. So I want to talk a little bit about this particular source, something that's in this particular source, right? For those of you who don't know, this is talking about historically black universities and how they were established in the 19th century. But anyway, let's go on. So in 1799, Washington and Lee University admitted John Chavis, who is noted as the first African American on record to attend college. Yeah, if you didn't learn that on Each One Teach One, you got it here. In 1799, Washington and Lee University admitted John Chavis, who is noted as the first African American on record to attend college. However, the first African American to have earned a bachelor's degree from an American university, Alexander Lucius Twilight, graduated from Middlebury College in 1823. John Chavis is noted as the first person to go to a college, but Alexander Lucius Twilight is noted as the first person to graduate from university in 1823. Now, 3 decades later, Mary Jane Patterson was the first African American woman to earn a bachelor's degree. She graduated from an abolitionist-centered Oberlin College in 1862. These individuals were singularly in assessing higher education. So again, you got John Chavis, Alexander Lucius Twilight, and Mary Jane Patterson. Richard Humphreys established the African Institute that we know today as Cheney University in 1837. It's in Pennsylvania, for those of you who don't know, making it the oldest HBCU in the United States. What is the oldest HBCU in the United States? Cheney University. It wasn't called that before. It was called the African Institute. And it was established by who? Richard Humphreys. All right. What was learned there? Students were taught reading, writing, and basic math alongside religion and industrial arts. During the 50s, 3 more HBCUs were founded. Minor Normal School, 1851 in DC, Lincoln University, 54 in Pennsylvania, Wilberforce, 1856 in Ohio. The AME Church established Wilberforce. The first HBCU that's operated by African Americans was what? Wilberforce. Who established it? The AME Church. Where's Wilberforce? Ohio. The provision of education for the other ones, you know, it was abolitionists, you want to say, or pilgrims. The provision of education for people of African descent in the early Americas was recognized by some unnecessary and criminal, while others saw it as essential and vital. Now, the majority of HBCUs originated from 1865 to 1900, with the greatest number of HBCUs starting in 1867. It wasn't until the 50s and 60s when they desegregated all of that we began going other places. But prior to that, we could only go to the schools that were for us, by us, FUBU. So we had no other choice. I'm running that back for a reason, because I want to make it known what your choices was as a human being in that time. So now we know when the majority of HBCUs began. Now, 2 years after Emancipation Proclamation, Alabama State University, Barber Scotia, Fayetteville State, Howard, John C. Smith University, Morehouse, Morgan, St. Augustine, Talladega, they all come into play. Over a century later, HBCUs were still being established by J.F. Drake State Technical College, University of Virgin Islands, Southern University of Shreveport, Morehouse, and then technically HBCUs are those IHEs established prior to 1964 to educate persons of African descent. Those founded after 1964 are known as predominantly black institution, PBIs, not PWIs, PBIs. This is key here, but are included in this study as part of the 101 HBCUs. So I want you to think about something. Schools, yeah, you heard me. HBCUs are those IHEs established prior to 1964. PBIs are after 1964, but they are included in 101 HBCUs. The technical definition of PBI as established in the Higher Education Act of 2008 includes the following criteria. At least 40% African American students, minimum of 1,000 undergraduates, and have at least 50% low income or first generation degree seeking undergraduate students, and have a low per full time undergraduate student expenditure in comparison with other institutions offering similar instruction. These qualifications reflect conditions in which HBCUs operate and indicate that since their founding, HBCUs continue to serve as the core constituencies, students who are African descent and or first generation and or low income. Approximately 89% of all HBCUs in the southern region of the United States, although they can be found in Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. North Carolina hosts 11 HBCUs. Louisiana has 7. Alabama has 12. While many consider HBCUs to be a homogeneous group, there are levels of diversity within a unique classification of institutions, and not only by academic distinction and socioeconomic status, but also in student demographics. In addition, HBCUs have diverse classification, public-private, denominational, liberal arts, land grant, independent university systems, single gender serving, research-based, large and small, with enrollment numbers that can range from less than 300 to 11,000 students. Mm-hmm. Hit the like button, man. So that's a little bit about some stuff many people may not have known. You got to drop the jewels when you can. Somebody's learning something today. So, again, when were HBCUs established? Between really 1864 into 1964. Right? Anything after 1964, you call them pretty much predominantly black institutions, which but are included in HBCUs. So this article that I have on the screen is pretty much a summary of what I just basically ran down, because it talks about what is historically black college and universities, and it name drops some stuff that we actually mentioned. Now, but this one talks more specifically about when Richard Humphreys arrived in Philadelphia from British Virgin Islands in 1764. He was still in his teens, but even then, the young Quaker was disturbed by the conditions of facing African Americans in the city. And so, like most adherents to Quaker principles, Humphreys was vocal in the opposition to slavery and donated freely to abolitionist causes. He was increasingly convinced that education was at least one key to improving Black Americans. So that lets you know that Humphreys was the white man. Then in 1829, Humphreys read of race riots consumed in Cincinnati, Ohio. The 79-year-old responded to the news by altering the details of his will, writing in bequestment for the establishment of schools to instruct the descendants of the African race in school learning in the various branches of the mechanic arts, trades, and agriculture, and in order to prepare and fit and qualify them to the teachers. You know, I'm just messing with y'all. Y'all want to know who Richard is? Let me show y'all Richard. Dang, you can't even see a picture, bro. I don't know why they don't want y'all to see Richard. But anyway, he would pass 3 years later due to his philanthropic work. 1837, 1/10 of his estate, totaling 10,000, was dedicated to the Founding Institute of Color. Youth in Philadelphia. It was the very first institution of higher learning accessible for African Americans. You have Humphreys to thank for your first educational system. All right. Now, what HBCUs can teach us, right, about culturally sustaining practices. This article was written by these four. You have Ava Mateo, Nikki Edgecombe, Julia Rothman, and Jessica Brathwaite. And they wrote a nice little article. I'm not really going to try to get too much into it. I'm trying to stick to the emphasis of practice and stay within the confines of the definition of culture. This really pretty much just talks about the institutions as a whole and nothing more, culturally specific, except for when they get into some things that they want to, excuse me, I was yawning, that they want to, kind of regard toward school as an example. A sense of belonging and efficacy is critical for student success. Culturally relevant and responsive offering that are incorporated into all facets of college culture, policies, and practices are keys to achieving a sense of belonging. So you'll see it show up right there in that thing. But you can read that for yourselves. I'm not really gonna get into it. I want to kind of build it up. So here's six reasons HBCUs are more important than ever. I'm trying to give y'all everything that has to deal with HBCUs, and then I want to go back to what the definition of culture is again, so that we can determine if there's two separate cultures within us. So I'm just gonna go across the six things that we need to know. As far as the first thing is outsized impact, low cost equals best buy in education. So their argument is that HBCUs have a lower tuition cost and has a bigger impact individually on our Black sisters and brothers. So you get the best bang for your buck. And then you have an opportunity to do number two. Um, this helps meet the needs of low income first generation students because they provide, look what it says, provide a stable and nurturing environment for those who most at risk of not entering and completing college. Low income first generation college students. Many of these students are academically underprepared for college, yet they're precisely the students that the country most needs to obtain college degrees. And then the low cost narrow the racial wealth gap. Though 43 million Americans across the racial and socioeconomic spectrum have nearly 1.3 trillion in college funds, Black households are far more likely to have students' debts at all income levels. About 54% of African Americans between the ages of 25 and 40 have student loans. Shit, I got them bitches. Fannie Mae, man. And number four, campus climate fosters success. Without even really too much getting into what this is saying, this is basically saying if you're around your people, you're more likely to thrive because you vibe at a different level than not being around your people. And they feel like students of color being around each other, having Black teachers can spark success in a lot of people. You can argue either way you want to go. Some of us feel comfortable being around our own people. Some of us don't. Well, some of us don't even care. Number five addresses the nation's under and unemployment crisis. Says the nation needs HBCUs more than ever. By early 2015, the underemployment rate for the recent college graduates had reached 44%. For African American college graduates, the rate was even higher, 56%. At the same time, the unemployment rate for African American college graduates between 22 and 27 is 12.4%. And that's more than twice the rate of white counterparts. And then 6, the biggest argument of them all, HBCUs offer a true values proposition. And it talks about, HBCUs being rooted in faith, community, and service. HBCUs being rooted in Black churches, which have been pillars in the Black community historically. And it's also intertwined faith. I want y'all to think about that. When you think of an HBCU, you immediately think about faith, right? Values, things of that nature. All right, so there are 6 points right there. Now, let me go back based on everything that we've read so far. And I possibly may have lost a couple of people. But out of what I read so far pertaining to HBCUs, as it compares to culture, remember, culture is defined as symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are a part of a society. Is there such a thing as HBCU culture? Or are we using the wrong words and it should be traditions? HBCUs have a rich history. We just went through a little bit of synopsis of the early history and how long it's been into effect. We talked about what it was intended for. We talked about the importance of values and things of that nature that has to deal with a group of people. We didn't get into the artifacts because what would be considered HBCU artifacts today is different because time has lapsed and a lot of legacy has been left behind. So now we can look at distinctive places as historical in some sense. But what artifacts can you muster up that would represent that are part of that experience that wouldn't be tied to the Black experience? You know what I'm saying? So let's move on. Now, after all of that I just said, I already played the description. I want to play this video from this point to AD Drew speaks, because it is when AD Drew speaks before this commercial break that's very important. And I need everybody to listen to everybody for 24 minutes. I'm going to let it play. And then I'm going to come back. Now, we start at the 5-minute mark. And it ends with AD Drew around the 29-minute mark.
This is Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, both Mike Washington and Charles Bishop are out on assignment. So we're going to go off the radar a little bit and go to the visiting professors and the HBCU sports football analyst, if you would, with Joshua Sims Sr., VJ Jones. And then we have old clinical professor. He's always getting it done. And when I say, I mean that in the metaphorical sense that he has a lot of assignments over the years. So he's just the old guy that comes in here and brings it to you all the time because he's been with the system for a while. So you just expect that he's going to be here and do it right. So just letting people know. And I say that a little bit because I want to get into this commentary a little bit between what I refer to when you look at the African Studies methodology in terms of the social structure and the governance structure. So I wanted to start this out and be quite open. I had an article that I got a chance to give a quote to out of NBC, which obviously I see as the governance structure, just like ABC, ESPN, CBS, Fox, whatever you want to call it. Those are part of the social structures. What we see, some of those folks that are involved at HBCU, what is HBCU Sports, HBCU Game Day, this right here inside the HBCU Sports Lab, BJ Jones with his HBCU Twitter spaces that he does on Tuesday, June, the Wednesday, HBCU Nightly, if I understand, it's moving to Saturday. The Joshua Sims and the cadre of gentlemen that work with them on that. In a lot of ways, that's what you call, or what I would call, the governance structure. Who are we to each other versus social structure? What do people think of us in this greater framework that we live in the United States, and some people say even America? I mean, even across the world in terms of what that looks like. So I wanted to frame this in that frame because the title concerned me, to be frank with you, as Deion Sanders is, quote, sellout. Experts say it's complicated, which is certainly what I said. And other folks, HBCU Pro Football Hall of Famers' loyalty intentions were called into question when he traded an HBCU for a better funded. They use predominantly, I use historically, because that's another construct that they use that provides a different layer that allows, as if historically white institutions has changed, and it doesn't give any historical context, that they were found as historically white institutions for, at that time, mostly white men, later women, and then finally as they open up inclusion. While you have historically black colleges were founded for black folks, but they never were discriminatory. Anybody could change these institutions, and they had. So it's a different framework when you look at who we are to each other versus how do other folks see us. And I'll see that reframe again. And so when you talk about that, I want to go back and give y'all some insight just to let you know how this works. So if you would, Drew, pull up the first email. It's a little small, so hopefully I get a chance to kind of read it to individuals so they can see it in terms of what that looks like, in case it's smaller than I would desire. But I wanted to show you because that's exactly where it came from. This is Char Adams, and she worked and writes obviously for NBC News. And so she's a columnist, journalist, if you will. So she said, hello, my name is Char Adams, and I'm a reporter for NBC News. I'm writing an article about Deion Sanders and the reaction to his leaving Jackson State for Colorado. I would love to speak with you about the reaction largely from Black social media users and why you believe Black people are describing Sanders' departure as abandoning an HBCU. Would you be willing to speak with me in a brief phone interview today? I'd love to highlight your expertise in my story. So obviously I was quoting in here, and I got a chance to do that. If you're in the academy and you one of the things that you do in there is you write journal articles, books, book chapters. Those are things that you're responsible for tenure and to continue to weight and increase the value of the institution in this social norm structure, which means writing grants. And among your lectures, which I'd like to say as you get good with that, you become an expert teacher in a lot of ways. And one of the last things we are responsible for is engaging with the institution in terms of service. And sometimes they can be outside of the university, depending on what that looks like, right? So notice the term she used, the governance structure. She said banding. But I guarantee you the individual and she happens to be an African-American woman in terms of that she does, she and her, and she puts out the idioms out there to be recognized in that. And that's why I use that framework, because she put it out there from that perspective. But I would hesitate and I would question, I wonder who is the editor? What does the editor look like? Because it was purposely chosen to use in the title of the article, sellout. And if you look at anybody's quotes in there, they don't use that terminology. Only in the first paragraph before you get into quotes is it used. So I'm sure that was something that was done by the editor. She didn't even do that. So I want to clear her up. So I want to make it clear that we need to be understanding oftentimes there's tools that are used in this social structure that creates an environment where we argue with each other about things that we are having. And I'm saying this is an important conversation in regards to who we are to each other. So we can have this conversation with Coach Prime, Coach Deion, our expectations. We can have this conversation with Charles Adams in terms of who we are to each other. We can have it. That's a governance structure. We have the right to have that conversation. But oftentimes you have other folks that don't quite understand that, and they use and see the world how they see it through a social lens, and they bring a whole different framework to it. And that's where you get a lot of confusion, and you see folks that are having these different degrees of framing. Because in the social structure, it's about individual growth, individual frame, all right? Versus in the governance structure, it tends to be more about who we are to each other. Self-empowerment, right? What does it mean in terms of institutional frame? So I really wanted to make sure we did that. One thing I'll leave you with, and again, if you want to get a little more information on what this looked like, obviously you can read the article and my quotes. If you would, Drew, pull up my quote that was out there. And I got a chance. She asked 15 minutes. I spoke for 45, and I went into the social structure and governance structure. But she touched on the quote I had put in there, which is, as you all know, professor of health, kinesiology, and sports studies, specializing in HBCU sports at Texas University, said focusing solely on the financial incentives and upward mobility of Sanders' new job ignores the social identity. And I also talked about social separation, anxiety theory, those kind of theories I brought in there. I use fan engagement theory as well. But this gets to the bottom of it when you just say social identity. Of sports, as much as college football is a business and money driver, there's a cultural significance to the programs that manifests itself in life loyalty to teams, students, colleges, and choice. Quote, people are fighting two competing frameworks, end quote, Kabil, the co-editor of The Athletic Experience, a historic black college and university, past, present, persistent. Obviously, y'all are quite aware of the book. And so with that said, I just thought it was contextual to make sure that you got an understanding of where all this is going. The last thing I will leave you with before I bring these gentlemen in, they can give some thoughts on this if like, but we're really gonna allow them to get into the football context where they are, where they thrive and stuff like that, because that's where their expertise is. And obviously they're free in this governance structure to give their opinions or whatever part of that, but I didn't want to spend a great deal on that. I wanted to take that onus on myself for this process, because that's where I've been groomed, that's where I lay out. The last thing that you might want to get a chance to check out is, if you go to Twitter, Hip Hop Prez, that previously was the president of Dillard, and now he is continuing to do some work on that level. He actually put out a tweet. I would agree and encourage others, as well as particularly those that are engaging in the Coach Prime debate, to listen to Brother Carr, Karen Hunter from this day forward, which is my return to his statement. Said I would agree and encourage others, as he put out there in terms of his text, that I thought was important in terms of Dr. Walter Kimbrough. I would encourage everyone engaged in the primetime debate to listen to at African Carr, that's his Twitter handle, and at Karen Hunter, we call him Dr. Carr and Professor Hunter for those that engage with them. From today, Brother Carr is adding a nuance that most of us are missing brilliantly. And he's referring to a YouTube video that is called In Class with Carr. If you get a chance, we'll put it out there in some spaces, pull it up. You can go check out that video. He says this is part 2 of a 3-part series. He'll talk about the Celebration Bowl, my understanding, next Saturday as it gets going. But he's talked about this the last 2 weeks. So if you get a chance to listen to that, you'll really get an in-depth knowledge, something that we don't have time to do on this show because it's really more about sports. So with that being said, as we engage and get back into the sporting context, I thought that was important to put that on the table. This is the video that you see here where they start this dialogue. Brilliant folks that are in the space about who we are to each other. They like to use the frame. What is the decision? What is this? What does it do to free us in that space? So those that understand it and buying that can see that. With that being said, do you all have any additional thoughts that y'all want to share at this time? I'll go with you, Joshua, if you want to get into it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a kind of start it and just lay here. I'm gonna be quick on this. As you've seen, as everybody's seen through HBCU Nightly, we've had a lot of these conversations. I often refer to Dr. Cavill as the general. He knows this, and that is a sign of respect that I have for the work that he's done in this community and inside of this side of the framework and everything he's done, and on both sides, man. One of the few gentlemen who's had the ability to kind of ebb and flow between both sides of the contextual societal structures. And so I often refer to him as one of the generals. And one of the things that he brought to the forefront in HBCU Nightly 2 weeks ago was last week actually, was that we have to be careful about how we view and how we depict someone else's views. We were using the contextual idea of religious views, as we refer to it. It's a kind of an inside joke amongst the HBCU community about God and the consistency of Coach Prime's perspective as it pertains to God. But he made a very poignant statement and made me go back and start writing last week about the importance of understanding perspective and how perspective can change and look. So I essentially landed my plane, this week on one centralized idea, and I do plan to do some more writing on this, but and kind of gather some information and some data as it pertains to this statement that I'm about to make, and then I'm gonna pass it. But I am of the clear understanding that no institutions, businesses, corporations have done more for the Black community than the historically Black college and university. I was poised with a question about Dr. King as it pertains to if Dr. King was made via the HBCU or made via the Black church, and I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not doing a comparative analysis between what's happened between the Black church and the institution that is the Black church. And
it's good, because that's a social construct. They want you
that's a social construct. Exactly. They serve two totally different purposes, but they're complementary to each other. So exactly. And so I've landed my plane on being able to make sure that people, in the context of this conversation, it has allowed for me to be able to do something that I've always wanted to do, and that is highlight the impact that historically Black colleges and universities have had on our community, both in large and small effect. And so where I've kind of now turned my focus away from the Coach Prime component of this and the Deion Sanders component of this, I've now turned my focus completely to making sure that people understand the impact that historical Black colleges and universities have had, and in a lot of ways led by the general, Dr. Jacob Cavill, who's welcomed me into this, but also by people like my grandparents, like my parents, who all went to North Carolina Central. My wife's parents, my wife's aunts and uncles and things like that, who all went to North Carolina Central. And this is all we know. So for those of you who are detractors, who may not understand the impact of HBCUs, who may not understand why components of and pockets of our community are so, you would say emotional, I would say passionate. I would say just understand that we understand the impact that historically Black colleges and universities have had, our greatness that we've sustained over the years, and why it's important for us to be able to put ourselves back on at the pinnacle of our community's impact.
So based on this brother who was a North Carolina Central guy, he has made a complete distinction between the African-American society who did not attend HBCUs and the historical Black college and universities' impact on the Black community. I'm gonna say that again. He's making a distinction. He is saying that he is motivated, inspired to write about the impact of HBCUs on the Black community, but not the other way around. I hope y'all heard everything that he actually is saying. Now, Dr. Cavill is saying, don't use the word Black because they're trying to get you caught up in a debate about social construct when you say Black community versus the historically Black college and university, right? So he's like, let's not have a social debate. Let's talk about the impact that HBCUs have always had on the Black have always had on our people. They're drawing the line in the sand. Just continue to listen. We're gonna get there. We almost where we need to be because the second dude is not as long, and then the other dude is not as long as this brother.
And wanting to see our student athletes that look like us come to our universities, and that's a larger conversation. I understand and recognize, but I will not come off of the stage that HBCUs have had the largest impact on the African American community in this country. And these are the longest lasting businesses that our people have created. And, and I'll support that with some data and some information as time goes by. But
there you go. HBCUs have had the biggest impact on us. And he's going to argue it in an article and show evidence and facts. Now, what I provided y'all earlier was the insight on when the institutions were first built. But you also have to remember, these institutions were built with a purpose, one purpose in mind, and that is to educate the black and keep them off the backs of the whites. Had nothing to do with equal and fair opportunity. Because if schools were unsegregated, what do you think black people would have went? They would have went to predominantly black institutions and predominantly white institutions. But there's something brewing here that y'all ain't catching. And me having the privilege of going to an HBCU and have the PWI experience, there's something brewing here.
In the meantime, that is where I'm landing on this conversation. And I am I have a direct perspective as it pertains to that. My family would not be in the position that it is today had it not been for the HBCU. So that's where I am.
Had it not been for the HBCU, his family wouldn't be where it is today. Let's continue.
Important context, and you have done that work on Twitter. As much as BJ Jones, as I've seen him correct folks that just kind of fly off the handle and make a comment. Yeah. And there's some folks out there that will check you in terms of your accuracy. Not because they're emotional. They just check you because you're accuracy. They'll put it in a line, maybe a sentence. If you're lucky, maybe two. Sometimes it's one word. I was like, wow, I love it. So coming to you, BJ Jones, because you're one of those architects that have done that extremely well. What are your thoughts in terms of what I opened the show with?
I think the biggest thing that we've seen really over the last week is that a lot of the people who have seemed to have reveled in the idea and the thought that the HBCUs were broken down a peg look like us. That's the most troubling and disturbing thing that I've gotten out of this last week. And also, with the internet comes a great responsibility. The internet, we've been able to inform people. We've been able to inform the masses very quickly, much quicker than back in the day when we had the daily news and the town newspapers. And it's
weekly
amazing.
News more likely.
Right.
Black newspapers.
Yeah. But it's amazing how an opinion and a picture, we put those together and create what we call a meme. Meme can go viral, can override the statements of a university as well as print media. So it's been amazing to be able to watch that and kind of see where we are. And then a lot of people who, I said, they don't understand nuance. They don't understand deductive reasoning and things that you would expect college-educated people to understand. Every argument is not a this or that. A lot of it is a this and that. And it's amazing that people don't understand that. So I think just this entire week just has been, it's been interesting. Haven't seen a lot of Jackson State people, contrary to what people believe, that have been very upset. They've been, more like, hey, water off of a duck's butt than most other people, right?
Right.
But it's amazing how in this these narratives get created, and it doesn't matter if the narrative is correct, if it's sustained by fact. If the narrative out there, we're just going to keep running with it because that's the narrative.
With that being said, AD Drew, as we close on this, did you want any final thoughts on this, or are you ready to go to the break?
No, you know I got to get a piece of this also, Dr. Kabir.
I didn't want to force anybody.
And BJ, you know why people like that and it different? It's this long thing that I learned a long time ago. Perception is reality. I'm pretty sure it's bright and sunny where each and every one of us is. But if I told you it was pitch black, dark, and snowing outside, and you believe that in your mind, there's nothing that I can humanly do to convince you that it's not pitch black, snowing, and cold outside. I'm sorry. That's just the type of people that we are. Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. It's snowing outside, and then there's HBCU. That's just the type of people that we are. Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture.
Just because you're black don't mean that you understand HBCU culture. Just because you black don't mean that you understand HBCU culture. Culture was defined earlier as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are part of any society. So when we look at HBCU culture, does HBCU culture have its own language? What about its own symbols? What about its own beliefs? What about its own values? What about its own artifacts? That's what makes up culture. Let's be more specific. Non-material culture, also known as symbolic culture, it includes values, beliefs, symbols, and language that define a society. So in non-material culture, do HBCUs have their own values from Black culture? No. They're married. It's one and the same. Beliefs. The schools are all institutions that were set up and they all kicking the church shit. Let's keep it a buck. There's no new religion at an HBCU. Everybody that attends a church, that goes to an HBCU, that lives on that campus or off campus, that attends a university, an HBCU, they go to the same church with other Black folk who ain't never been to an HBCU before or a university at all. Symbols. The symbols are orchestrated by the history of Black people before an HBCU. Same as the values. And we know for damn sure it ain't no damn separate language. Because the experience is entrenched in Black culture. Entertainment value. Stunting. Glamour, glitz. Showing off. Dressing. All that flashy shit. Then you have material culture. Includes the society's physical objects. HBCUs have buildings built by the governments. They got a church somewhere near the campus. Every HBCU in the South, or just period, it's a church somewhere near that campus in walking distance. I bull junk you not. And it may even be 2 churches or 3 churches on each side of the campuses of HBCUs, but are not affiliated with the actual institutions. So what tools and technology, clothing and eating utensils, and means of transportations do HBCUs have that would define a material culture? No. So we got to go with non-material culture. Nope, that don't even fit. So BJ, I need you to explain to me in what you're getting ready to say here. I need you to explain to me what the hell is the difference. Let me go back to 25.
Different cultures. There's Black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're Black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who gone, some of them gone to historically white colleges, some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now, the 4 of us have had the pleasure of embracing and living the HBCU culture in our all respective institutions. Dr. Cavill as an undergrad student at Prairie View, you as an undergrad at Southern, Joshua as an undergrad at Central, and myself as an undergrad at Florida A&M. And you know, the one thing that all 4 of our schools probably have in common, I'm not going to say probably, they do have in common. Our institutions were started with both hands behind their back. For those of us who went to a public institution, we got the worst draw when it came to the location of our school. You tell me any public institution that's an HBCU that is not either across the railroad tracks, by the graveyard, in the valley or swamp, or up on the hill. You name one. We got the worst real estate. We wanted to get y'all Negroes up out of town and get y'all the worst land. That's what happened back in the late 1800s and 1900s in that post-construction era. It's either that or your institution was started by a church who wanted to help educate the African American students. And you know, the funding for churches are low. So with that, we started with both our hands behind our back. We have come a long way, and we are living in a social experiment. We are now getting ready to begin phase 3 of that social experiment. Phase 1 was pre-prime. Phase 2 was just 3 years that we had prime at Jackson State. Now we're beginning phase 3 of that social experiment. So in about 2025, there's going to be some master's student or doctoral student who will be able to put together an equation and write a great thesis or dissertation based on a full evaluation of the prime effect.
And I might know who should do that. Charles Bishop, as he is in the doctoral program. So great way to close.
All right, so somebody in the chat said they agree with him. So I want to go back again. And I want to make it clear. He says that there's a difference between Black culture and HBCU culture. So I want to put it through scrutiny. If that is so, why is culture defined as early as the symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts that are part of any society? If you're dealing with non-material culture as symbolic, then it includes values, beliefs, symbols, and language. What are the values at an HBCU? They have Christian values. What do black people get? Christian values. What are the beliefs? They're the same. The majority of these jokers is Christians. What's on that campus? The majority of them jokers is Christians. What are the symbols? No, we ain't even got to get into the symbol. What is the language on an HBCU? That ain't in the hood, where people don't attend no university. It's the people that's in the hoods that generate the population at an HBCU. Here's the difference between a PWI and an HBCU. Experience. At a PWI, we stand out. We we pepper. We stand out. None of the teachers look like us, or the majority of the teachers don't look like us. The majority of the classrooms don't look like us. The hip hop or rap or gangster rap or whatever you want to, none of that is there. It's only among a certain setting. But the majority of them PWIs, they listen to rap too. They know what's up with the music going on. They vibe to that. You have less people that relate to your struggle at a PWI. That's why you'll see it pretty much when you go to PWI, you'll see it look pretty much segregated in a sense, but not really. Because the majority of black people migrate toward one another, they get to know one another, and they come up through this experience. At an HBCU, black people kind of off to themselves, so they vibe with another individual and get to know the particular people before they, doing too much clicking up and all of that. Normally, when you see clicking up, is people that already knew people beforehand. The teachers, I'm gonna say it again, the teachers, they look like you. At an HBCU, your teacher might not even feel like teaching that day and cancel class. That don't never happen at a PWI. The administration, the full administration may look just like you. Today, you'll see sprinkles of salt at HBCUs. At HBCUs, we got the band. We got majorettes. We got cheerleaders too. At PWIs, they got a band. They got cheerleaders. They ain't got no majorettes. Ain't no dancing offs. There's no first quarter, there's no zero quarter or fifth quarter at football games or halftime battles. They have halftime performances. At a PWI, they play more music over the intercoms than the band's beating because the band's really boring. At HBCUs, it's the entertainment value. So what is the culture at an HBCU? Oh, I'm able to take Black Arts and Literature as an English elective and it count toward me graduating. But if I go to a PWI, that Black Arts and Literature English class doesn't constitute as an English credit, but it'll count toward my additional electives. So they'll negate it in one sense and tell me that I need to go take another English class at a PWI. But in the other sense, they'll say, hey, we'll count it as an elective. That's the difference between the two as far as educational wise. I've had the experience. So when you tell me HBCU quote unquote culture is different from Black culture, what the hell you think makes up HBCU culture? Black people. So what it is tradition. Let me properly define this shit for stupid people. Oxford Languages. The transmissions of customs or beliefs from generation to generation, or the fact of being passed on in this way. That's what HBCUs are. Traditions. It ain't culture. The reason why it ain't culture is because you cannot properly define it. You can't define it, and no one defines it. They keep on saying HBCU culture, define it. Define it. If I'm ignorant or I'm talking stupid, define HBCU culture. I've been there. I've gone through the ranks. Great experience. Loved it. If it wasn't for the streets, I would have never left it. But because I was in the streets at the time that I was at an HBCU, the heat was on. I needed to get out of town before I end up somewhere I didn't want to be for the rest of my life, either dead or in jail. And I hated every minute of my PWI experience. So I'm gonna ask you again. Oh, you're a suburb kid. So I'm gonna ask you again. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to speak your speech, but I need somebody to come define HBCU culture to me. If you didn't go to an HBCU, you can't even start. You're just woofing. You have no experience. But the thing is that BJ, you heard him. AD Drew said it. I'm gonna take y'all back to it again. He never defines it. He never defines it.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who've gone, some of them gone to historically white colleges, some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now, the four of us.
Now, let's break it down a little bit more. Because, listen, I got two cousins that grew up in Franklin, Tennessee. Anyone familiar with Franklin, Tennessee knows that is outside the city limits, and it's out there predominantly at this time where white people were. They also even grew up in Brentwood. Okay? Now, it wasn't a culture shock for them because my grandmama, my aunties, they always came back in the city and they hung out on Joe Johnson and all that, and around Joe Johnson ain't nothing but Negroes. Right? You got MLK, the school, Martin Luther King Jr., that high school right there. And then you got Fisk behind it in walking distance, Meharry, and then TSU up the street. Okay, cool. But my cousin, she has friends that didn't come up in those experiences, but they're black. But they watch BET, they listen to all the music, they into everything that's black, but they never had an HBCU experience. So when they get among other people, you wouldn't even know that they ain't never been a part of the HBCU experience. But yet you're gonna tell me because they're from the suburb, they're separate. So what you're saying is the only people that can relate to HBCU quote unquote culture is people who've came around and been and grew up in that. That's bullshit. Yeah, we know that there's brothers and sisters who grew up in the suburbs and ain't even been around enough black people like that. All they know is the white people that they've been around at them private schools and private institutions and things of that nature. Yeah, we get that. We understand that. That happens. The wheels, but guess what though? At every private school, there's a Will Smith. The one black kid from the ghetto, the neighborhood, who grew up in it, is in a white institution balling out of control playing sports. That's a fact. So when he say this, he never defined it.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who gone. Some of them gone to historically white colleges. Some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel.
Now, I'm looking in the chat. Then I seen Honey say that HBCU culture celebrate everything black. It's black people to celebrate everything black that ain't never been to a fucking HBCU. So that don't make no sense. And you still have not defined HBCU culture. He ain't did it. You ain't did it either. What's HBCU culture? What's HBCU culture? I'm interested in knowing. You can go get your sister. You can go get whoever you want to go get. I've been to HBCU. Go get the founding fathers. They're gonna be white men. It's a handful of HBCUs that the church didn't help out with. I mean, that whites wasn't participating in the creation of or the evolution of those predominantly black institutions. So go get your sister. Come explain this. I'm interested.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's black culture, and then there's HBCU culture.
Now, let me show y'all something. You remember earlier that I said the earliest institutions, right? The earliest institution. Remember that. Remember, at the beginning, around the civil rights, right? There you go. 1837, we would name stuff in the 1860s, stuff like that. Remember, the first one was Middlebury College in 1823. Remember that? Yeah, I remember that, right? 1823. This dude, Alexander Lucius Twilight, he graduated from college, from Middlebury College. Mary Jane Patterson, first African-American woman to get a bachelor's degree from an abolitionist-centered Oberlin College in 1862. Y'all remember what I said there? You got Cheney College, which was known as the African Institute. That was what in 1837 in Pennsylvania. So here you go. Right here. This makes it the oldest HBCU, 1837. Right? So someone in the chat talked about pride, HBCU pride or black pride. Look when the Black Pride era began. Look when the Black Pride era began, y'all. In the 1960s to the 70s, they bring out the Kente cloth, and the Black Panthers uniforms were worn in the U.S. as an expression of black pride. Look when Black Pride began, y'all. Black pride in the United States is a movement which, let me hold up, my bad. Black pride in the United States is a movement which encourages its black people to celebrate African American culture and embrace their African heritage. When did we have this pride movement, ladies and gentlemen? We all know that it was in the 60s. We all know that it was in the 60s. The pride movement. We've been celebrating ourselves. We've been celebrating ourselves. But remember, the celebration of self, you must have been late as hell. I'm gonna blame that on late as all get out, right? Because even in this, we talked about PBIs. So I'm gonna go back to it. Technically, let me get through this. Boom. Make it bigger for the slow folk. Bring it up. Technically, HBCUs are those IHEs established prior to 1964 to educate persons of African descent. Those founded after 1964 are known as PBIs, predominantly Black institutions, but are included in this study as part of the 101 HBCUs. The technical definition of a PBI, as established as the Higher Education Act of 2008, includes the following criteria. At least 40% of the African-American students, minimum of 1,000 undergraduates, have at least 50% low income or first-generation degree-seeking undergraduate students, and have a low per full-time undergraduate student expenditure in comparison with other institutions offering similar instruction. These qualifications reflect conditions in the HBCUs operate and indicate that since their founding, HBCUs have continued to serve their core constituencies, students who are of African descent and or first generation and or low income. So the Black or the predominantly Black institutions is after 1964, right around the time we have this whole Black pride, Black power movement. But we were celebrating ourselves long before those establishments. We've been calling ourselves African long before then. So to say what you said about HBCUs being about Black pride, there was a lot of people that wasn't in a college during that stretch that was repping Black pride. There still is people that ain't been to an HBCU or a PWI that represent Black power, Black pride. So the whole notion and the assumption that these things do something that other people, it's people in PWIs, Black people. They represent Black power, Black pride. The hell you think going on? Have you not seen Ice Cube in Higher Learning? In the West Coast, they don't have HBCUs out west. There ain't no HBCUs in that direction. Let me be a little bit more clear. Because we seem to talk about experience, which is really tradition. We seem to talk about all of this, and we don't even know nothing. See, you went to a private school, little lady, little white, little private institution. You know what I'm talking about? You went to a private school that was built by them colonizers. And you up here, you talking about something. You see, that's what HBCU people do to you. They gonna look at you like, how you gonna defend us? And you went to a private school, yada 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 yada. And see, that's a problem. That's why I'm saying his words have ramifications, because they're trying to separate Black culture from the HBCU experience, when it is Black culture that embodies the traditions at HBCUs. So here go all the historically Black colleges and universities. You see anything very interesting here? Anything interesting here? There's 3 in Ohio. They're there. 3. Ain't that many where you from, and they ain't nowhere near where you from. Huh? Kentucky got 2. Huh? We ain't even got to play this game. Oklahoma got 1. Texas got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Louisiana got like 6. Mississippi got about 7. Arkansas got 4. Tennessee got 5, 6, 7. I forgot about Knoxville College. I don't even know if that's still a thing. North Carolina got a gang of them. North Carolina, South Carolina got a gang of them. Florida got 3. Alabama got 12. You know what I'm saying? Georgia got about 8. They become less and less the closer you go further north. Ain't none in New Jersey. PA got some. I don't think it's not none in New York. They trying to claim so, but I don't think they're in existence. 1 in Delaware. 4 in Maryland. Come on, man. When we go west, they ain't west. But it's Black people in the West that were screaming Black pride, Black power, embracing and doing all of that pride stuff for a long time. A very mighty long time. Here go a better look. Here go a better look for you. Where the red states at, that's where your HBCUs is. That's a better view for you. There you go. There you go, right there. Out of 102 colleges and universities, historically Black colleges and universities, there you go. Here go all 102 on this map. Look at the states. Look. And none of them up there. None of them are over here. Look at that. Just all right here. But you finna tell me that these people in these areas wasn't on some Black power shit, wasn't about Black pride, ain't a part of Black culture? Well, I'm finna keep it all the way funky with you. People that are at HBCUs are bringing in the stuff that they learned from where they were at, because you have people from New York, Maine, California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan. You have people, Black people, that come to HBCU space and they bring with them the remnants of their society, their culture. So they assimilate into HBCU space and inherit the traditions of the HBCUs and take them back with them when they return home, if they return home. That's why I said it is not properly defined. What the hell is HBCU culture? When the band's playing music, the bands ain't playing music that's made in the HBCU space. The bands is playing music that comes off the same radio stations that everybody else is listening to across the United States. Go look at the band list. The women that dance, the majorettes. Go look at the dance moves. Huh? So that's basically what I'm saying about everybody is that y'all are misconceiving the way these things are supposed to go because you playing games. All the way. All the way. So again, I'm trying to look. So now I got this chat. I got this chat. All right. So these messages wasn't here before I made my comment. I was the first one to make a comment. I don't want to read this guy's comment. The best thing was said, we have the worst administrators, and this problem was exposed by Coach Deion Sanders. This nonsense has a 100-year history. HBCUs have had a great impact on the Black community, and that's why they should be a better result and outcomes for HBCUs. HBCUs are run poorly and have data and analysis on HBCUs and PWI sports programs. Dr. Cavill, I would like to speak with you because everyone speaks about X's and O's, but no one speaks about college sports business, economic strategies, ecosystem, economic infrastructure. Business is business. It's not black or white. JSU didn't need a lot of money, but the knowledge of constructing football contracts. HBCUs have been underfunded and lacking corporate support. And at the same time, HBCU sports programs and coaches are lacking in the knowledge and nuances of sports business. This kind of platform needs to do a better job at enlightening HBCU leadership and economic poverty taxation and permanent underclass status position, aka old traditions, will stay in place. Old traditions, aka slavery conditions. The documentary to expose HBCU nonsense ways of creating new business opportunities at HBCUs in cities of Jackson, Mississippi. You might not understand HBCU culture, don't have nothing to do with college football and sports nuances of business. Dr. Carr would be correct if JSU and HBCUs wasn't doing backwards and inept Black leadership in every sector in Black America. JSU was leaving $4.3 billion on the table every year. My comment, define HBCU culture. I went to an HBCU, and what makes a culture? None of y'all so-called HBCU people have yet to define to anyone because you can't. It's experience. The right word is tradition. You don't have HBCU culture without Black. How in the hell y'all separating this? Y'all are college professors and graduates who don't understand culture. What the fuck? They're professors, graduates. This is a sports show. And this is said between all four of them.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's Black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're Black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who gone. Some of them gone to historically white colleges. Some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now, the four of us have had the pleasure of embracing and living the HBCU culture in our all respective institutions. Dr. Cavill as an undergrad student at Prairie View, you as an undergrad at Southern, Joshua as an undergrad at Central, and myself as an undergrad at Florida A&M.
So he runs down where they all went to school. I'm going to continue to tell you this. There's no such thing called HBCU culture. It is a false dichotomy. It is improperly, there's no definition for it. Because the title of HBCU says historically black. So how the hell you gonna take black up out of there? And separate black culture from HBCU culture? When you need black people to make up the damn HBCU culture. Now, I'm looking at EIE comment on the Kofi Pie channel, and he seems to assume. Well, I don't think he's assuming, but he may think that. Well, he might not be thinking it. Somebody else might be thinking it. That I'm finna tell you to go to a PWI. You are out of your rabbit ass mind if you ever think that Sean is gonna fix his lips and mouth to say you need to go to a PWI. I'm not. It's not what I'm gonna say. I'm going to say you need to strongly consider HBCUs. It's a hell of an experience, especially for undergrad. And after undergrad, if you want to go to a PWI, take your behind to a PWI. Graduate from an HBCU first. If you feel that an HBCU will give you a good opportunity to go to the NFL, and it will, go. But if you feel like you have a better chance at going to a PWI to improve your resume so that you could get drafted, I understand. We all should understand. But it is a new day and there's more light on HBCUs, and we're in a place and a space to where it will always remain popular. It is back on the map. There are things that HBCUs need to do a better job at, and that were highlighted in a lot of the comments that was said. But to separate black culture from HBCU culture is nigga shit. It's one and the same. It's synonymous because you can't have one without the other. So why are we being ignorant among ourselves? Are we now creating tribes? The tribe of HBCU and the tribe of black culture. I'm just going to stick to the black side. Because on the black side, we're doing a lot more than the HBCU space. Some of y'all are real passionate about HBCUs. And I understand the passionate, your level of passionate about HBCUs. I embrace all of that. But I don't separate myself from being black or my black experience or the culture that was ingrained in me and remained in me when I attended an HBCU or PWI. Period, point blank. The problem is that the celebrity of Coach Prime overshadowed the HBCU space. And his celebrity and status invoked a light on HBCUs that actually revealed some of the ugly scars that transpire and take place. And I'm going to give you an experience. At Thanksgiving, y'all remember that, right? Because y'all was with y'all families, right? Celebrating, right? I go to my cousin's house and get some food. To get some sides. And she made me a pie while I sat there and we, messing with my entire family while they were there. Her husband's niece walks in the door who attends Tennessee State University in HBCU. I'm talking to her. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, everything cool. I said, how's your school? She's like, I was thinking about leaving. I was like, why are you thinking about leaving? And she was like, well, the administration keep losing my transcripts and, all this stuff that I keep giving them. I done gave it to them 3 times and they just keep on losing my paperwork. I go up there, somebody different every time I go up there, I got to deal with all these issues and stuff like that, right? With her paperwork. That's an administration problem. It's the same damn administration problem that Tennessee State was having when I was at that bitch. Why is that not fixed? My auntie was even a part of the administration and trying to organize and keep all of that together. My cousins was up there. My cousin's girlfriend was up there. Hell, everybody that I knew was in the city that was hustling was at Tennessee State. Yes, all the D-boys in the city at that time, because a lot of us, we went to college. We might have been trapping, but we was in college. And there was a lot of people that wasn't in college. But those of us who was trying to do something, we was in college. Learning the other ways. Whether it helped us or did not help us. However, they still having administration problems. And when it comes to money, y'all better listen to Mo, because Mo been talking about this. Where is this funding? Where is that funding? Where is this? I mean, there's money that the government is giving to these institutions, and somehow it's supposed to be taking care of graduations and things of that nature. But okay, so let's go look at let's peel the layer back. There's funding that's going into other places. You have people skimming off the top, losing their jobs and things of that nature. That's nigga shit. We have to do a better job if we're going to sell HBCU to everybody. But you cannot break it apart because you're emotional about a coach that came in and gave it light again and now it's gone. So now it's he ain't swag and he ain't understand the HBCU experience, or he went to a PWI. He didn't graduate from an HBCU, so he ain't one of us. Well, actually, he went to Talladega. Oh, well, Jackson State did that so that he can be a coach. Well, he did it and he got it and yada, yada, yada. So you tripping with no map, because that's how arrogant the HBCU space has been lately. You went to a PWI. Nigga, I'm still black going through the same shit you going through. It don't matter if I went through a PWI or not. That's how I would be talking to them. We both getting shot. We both getting pulled over by the cops. We both getting popped if we make the wrong move. We both going to jail for something. We're both being falsely interrogated and incriminated and profiled. We both got the same struggles, whether we got the same paying job or whatever the case may be. We might be in worse positions where we live in paycheck to paycheck. Don't talk to me because I went to a PWI, you went to an HBCU, you think that you more black than me. That's the problem. And then it come down to the swag. And it go like this in the MEAC too. In the SIAA. In all the HBCU spaces. It's like that. There's an arrogance among those who attend an HBCU. And then you break it down to these conferences. There's an attitude in these conferences. It's like, nothing against Brother Lavelle comment, but you seen him put it in the comment. He put swag, he put the whole swag comment in the chat. Just using his comment as an example. He put swag life in there to distinguish that he went to an HBCU, Grambling, and that's in the swag. So it's a different way of life in the swag, right? Through that experience. And if you are outside the swag and you come in and you say anything about the swag, Oh, they get in their goddamn feelings. They want to argue with you up and down in these spaces and places. But that's where ignorance comes in at, because a lot of these people that are successful ain't all from HBCUs. There's a lot of successful Black people that are out there that went to PWIs, and they might have the money, the power, and the connections to help HBCUs get funding, get some things figured out, and have nice recommendations for them to elevate in a space that we're now in. But you're blowing that off by doing this dumbass shit.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's Black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're Black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who've gone, some of them gone to historically white colleges, some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now,
So because they didn't entrench themselves into the HBCU culture or experience the HBCU culture, as you said, then it's just some things that they don't feel. So you don't know what it feels like to go to a PWI and you're in a classroom full of white people and they all looking at you like you shouldn't even be here. And the teacher is slick hating on you and not even addressing any of your questions or concerns. And you're seeing the racism clearly in your face, but you at that institution. You don't know what that feel like because that wasn't your experience in college. You were culturally entrenched in your own. You were still living a Black experience. You were fortunate to be among your own peers, so to say. But in no damn way is that culture. It's a culture shock when you come from an HBCU and go to a PWI. That's a shift. That ain't got nothing to do with tradition. You just went from being among all your Black people through the administration, all of that, to a predominantly white institution that's the total opposite side of the coin. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is these words are dangerous when you start trying to separate Black people from Black people. There's no better Black people on either side if they went to a PWI or an HBCU. We still the same. We got the same struggles. We got the same. Y'all attend y'all. Let me be specific. These people that separating people, they all go to the same Baptist, Methodist church. They go into the same church. Whatever the denomination is, the Black folk the same under the banner of the Lord. They all got the blood of Jesus in them. And they're going to praise God and use God as a pillar in the community and a staple in the community and put God in your face when they know you don't believe in a God. They're going to give God more credence than you when you just gave them $5, $10, $20, $100, $1,000, or $15,000. They're going to say, thank you, Jesus, or they're going to say, thank God. And then they're going to say, thank you after that. It is to their maker first. So I really don't want to get into none of the other stuff because it makes no sense when you can't define or tell me what the hell is Black culture and why is it different from HBCU culture. I said that a little different, so I'm gonna clean that up. We know what Black culture is. It's synonymous with the HBCU experience, or what we know as traditions, because tradition is the word. Because you're taking the culture that you have embraced in your through your Blackness. Listen to me. You're taking your culture, your innate culture. Look at what culture is again. Look what culture is again. Symbols, language, beliefs, values, and artifacts. You're taking those things and you are traditionalizing them among like-minded individuals that help you make up the society of the experience that you enjoy, that's called what? Historically Black colleges and universities. So I don't want to hear about there's a difference. You with the FAMU and you graduated, fam. I need you to define it for me. Dr. Cavill, you talked about methodology at the beginning of the show. How poor was your methodology to allow a separation of that to transpire? The one thing that you tried to avoid was getting into this whole social construct argument that's being had. But the name of the network that you're doing this show on is called the Black College Sports Network. It doesn't say the HBCU Sports Network. It says the Black College Sports Network inside the historically Black college and university sports lab. There's a lot of Black in that bitch. A lot of Black in that bitch.
Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. There's Black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you're Black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African American friends who gone. Some of them gone to historically white colleges. Some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now, the four of us.
So, if you go get a degree in history at an HBCU, and I go get a degree at a PWI in history, right? We got the same degree. Does your degree outweigh my degree? We both Black. We both have history degrees. We only just graduated from two separate institutions. So does my degree have more merit than your degree, or does your degree have more merit than my degree? And it's the same thing. Now, to employers, they may give mine a little bit more credence to yours, and that's sad. And it is sad. It's very freaking sad. But it is what it is. But here's the thing. If we keep them out of it and we're weighing them together, we ain't no different than one another. We both went and got an experience somewhere outside of where we grew up. But when we come back, now you telling me that I don't understand you because you had this experience and I had a different experience. There's no way that I can relate to your freaking experience. And that's bull jump. Excuse me. It's bull jump. I have a problem with that. And this is why I said the proper way to define it, the HBCU experience, is through tradition. Watch. Look at this. Well, I don't want to use this. Y'all gonna be like, see, you using the white man. You using the white man. Know how y'all Negroes is. White man can't define this. White man can't define that. So I'm gonna go through this real quick and then I'm gonna wrap. African traditions is expressed through many different art forms such as music, dance, art, sculpture, and beadwork. These traditions are deeply ingrained into the whole African culture. Many African languages are tongue languages, meaning that pitch level determines meaning. I want you to think about that because it's the same for what we sitting over here talking about. You're talking about tradition, and that's what the hell you need to work on to deal with. Dude, you playing too much right now, Caleb. And it is what it is with that. So on that note, man, I appreciate everybody tapping in. I can't wait to hear y'all arguments. Bring it. It is what it is. Scared money don't make no money. Black African, nope, can't even say that, bruh. Can't even say that because remember, HBCU space is different than black culture. So peace to everybody out there. Appreciate y'all tapping in. Like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. Share this with your HBCU and black culture fanatics.
It's in the place where y'all get a share. Niggas gon' hate, do I look like I care? I was dealing with pain, frustrated with life. How many were there? Thanks to the few for staying true. My oldest to you, it all comes with paying your dues. Some couldn't walk a day in my shoes. Light on my feet, never lie in the ass. You hummingbirds can't say you're bumping them word, I'm way out of your class. Oh, do I share? Y'all master degrees. Life is a test, every day is a task. Progress to your best, give it all that you have. Move up the block, peel the paint off the F. Never lose sight of your goals. I made diamonds from doubt. Turn my grief into gold. My destiny was set in stone. They selling ass and selling souls. Hands off a cider, hands off my pocket. You know that chopper, bodies probably rock the blocker. All they heard was bow, bow, bow. Sound like Waka Flocka. Straight to the top about it, ain't no doubt about it. Best believe we on the road. No limit, so we body, chiefing on a whole lot of woe. Number one with a bullet, no. Similarly, boost hit the function, we Hennessy. I feel like 96 Tennessee. Yeah, ho, I'm on they head, fo. Always ignoring the sound. Now I put more in they mouth. Don't call me your king when y'all giving whores the crown. Y'all niggas watered down in me. I'm prohibitionary liquor. I'm like a 9 on the Richter, sublime state of mind, no ordinary nigga.